I'm Julie Mason. Joining me now, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is a Republican representing the 1st Congressional District in Nebraska. He tweets at Jeff Fortenberry. Congressman, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Julie. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Tell us about the Act for ALS.
Yeah, thanks so much, first of all, for your interest in this. The Act for ALS, frankly, is trying to make hope real for 30,000 people in America who have this cruel, unforgiving disease that's neurodegenerative. People begin to lose body functions. They can't walk, they can't eat, they can't speak, and ultimately can't breathe and die. It again, is just cruel and unrelenting, and frankly, this swept upon my own family within the last year. About 4 years ago, my wife's little brother noticed a trembling in his hand, and in his heart of hearts, he knew it was the worst, although they went through multiple tests to figure out and hope there would be something else. And he just recently died, and he left behind 4 small children and his wife. But I've met with so many beautiful people, honestly, throughout the country who are suffering with this, and we've tried to put together a very aggressive effort in Congress to rethink the disease research paradigm, to break it up, because there's been 50 trials, and nothing really has worked that well. There is some emerging science, though, that is showing some promise. So we're trying to do 2 things at once. Rethink the research paradigm through innovative public-private partnerships and give people access to emerging treatments for which they're limited right now. So that's what we're doing. Over 220 people in Congress, bipartisan, have agreed to this. There's a companion bill in the Senate, and we're pushing as rapidly as we can to get this done because the time horizon for people suffering with the disease is so narrow. So I'm so grateful that you're willing to listen to me a little bit on this because it affects a small group of Americans, but in such a profound way. I bet there's many people on the call who either have a friend or a relative who is affected by this, but it's important to talk about.
The legislation mentions of financial barriers for therapies being tested, and you would wish to create a grant program. How would that be funded?
It'll be funded. At some point, we have to spend money. This is what I call a public good. The private market cannot bring this about on its own, and just like other things that we decide are necessary for health and well-being and our own security, I believe this is. In fact, I'm a Republican. I've worked with Democrat colleagues to begin to lay the groundwork for funding for this. I received a call from the Trump administration a few months back. Dr. Francis Collins, who runs the National Institute of Health, saw what we were doing and began to commit some funds in this direction already. So we just have to decide on priorities. It's not all. I'm trying to be as fiscally prudent as possible, but I believe also in smart government, and certain things we have to deliver that are public good in nature.
And what timeline are you thinking for this? The next Congress?
I don't want to go there quite yet, Julie. We've got a few days left here. I am doing everything I can on behalf of this courageous community who's full of heart and full of goodwill, who acts in solidarity, to convince my colleagues that this is something that we ought to do now. Of course, we'll have a backup strategy if it doesn't happen right now before the end of this congressional session. But I'd like to see this added at the end of the year. I don't want to get too far out there and promise something I can't deliver, but we're doing everything we can with both sides of the aisle in both chambers to push this forward. And I'm hopeful that we can get it done, but certainly we'll keep working on it if it doesn't happen right now.
I'm very sorry for the loss of your brother-in-law. It's very sad.
Well, thank you for saying that. Look, when I was 8 years old or so, I read a book. It's one of the earliest books I ever remember reading, and it was on Lou Gehrig, and the famous Yankees first baseman who died 75 years ago. But he was tough, he was durable, he was just a fantastic athlete. He could hit, he could run. And then this disease came upon him. And there was a ceremony at home plate in Yankee Stadium. And he had these words. He said, "You may have been reading about a bad break that I got in the last 2 weeks." He said, "But today I consider myself the luckiest man alive." So just a person that had real hope, who was this extraordinary athlete who just watched his own body degenerate. He couldn't play any longer, then died. Well, we still have no cure after all this time and multiple trials that have failed. A little bit of hope on the horizon, and if we can change the way in which we're approaching the disease research paradigm, I think we can provide a lot of hope on the horizon, making hope real, as I'd like to say.
My guest is Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, Republican of Nebraska. He tweets at Jeff Fortenberry. Some exciting news out of Nebraska's 1st District. An Air Force base in your district was selected to be one of the 6 finalists to host Space Command.
Boy, we hope we get it. We are doing everything we can to convince the selection committee that Offutt Air Force Base, which also houses Strategic Command, which is our nuclear weapons control center, if you will, right here on the west bank of the Missouri River, where the open plains start, the Great Plains start, is one of our nation's most impactful pieces of national military infrastructure, Offutt Air Force Base and Strategic Command. So we think we're a very natural fit for Space Command. We have the technology, we have the space, we have the livability, we have a community that is very used to what I call public-private partnerships. In other words, we just built the new VA clinic. You might remember Denver had these huge cost overruns with their VA clinic and was having real trouble getting it done. Well, we got a new one built really, really fast. It recently opened because the community put up a lot of funds and leveraged government funding. This is bigger than that, but nonetheless, we have a community very willing to go to great lengths to make this a future home, as well as the technical expertise there at our base to compete well. We've got some heavy-duty competitors in Colorado and Alabama and Florida, but I think we've got a spring in our step, and I think we're going to make a really good case. So this could be very exciting for Nebraska. By the way, the Air Force Base and Strategic Command, Offutt Air Force Base and Strategic Command, are, again, an important part of the 1st Congressional District, but it lends itself to this unique character of the people that I represent there. It's one of the more uniquely diverse congressional districts in the country. It's 60% urban, with Lincoln being the home of our state capital as well as the home of our flagship university. We've got corn and cattle and traditional row crop production, 2 Native American reservations, a 3rd Native American tribe also is housed in the district. And then we've got these 2 major pieces of military infrastructure. It's a very, very unique place, and I'm proud to represent it.
Yeah, and you just won re-election as well.
I did. It was a strong election. It was a spirited election, but I'm happy it came through it and got a very sound number with good affirmation from the people I represent. One of the things I tried to talk about during this campaign was the fact that I've received about 50,000 pieces of mail in the last year. And there's all kinds of perceptions about members of Congress, but I told people, I said, I've reviewed every single piece of mail. If someone writes me, I feel it's my duty and obligation to listen to what they're trying to tell me. And that's one of the things we talked about aggressively. And I think it's important, particularly in this time of great cynicism toward politicians, that we work even harder to remain tethered, connected to the people we serve in solidarity. Now, in Nebraska, you can disagree, and someone can still support you, but you have to give them an explanation as to why you disagree with them. That's kind of the marked character of who we are.
Have you been doing telephone town halls and things like that with your constituents?
We did a number of them this past year, particularly when the pandemic hit. We included a number of experts on the line with us, including the head of our med center. The med center at the University of Nebraska is a leader in infectious disease. In fact, when the Ebola epidemic hit a few years ago, the university played a quiet role in helping with the containment, because we have the biocontainment units there, and we helped build that out for them in anticipation of whatever future pandemic may come. We're also working on a special project whereby the hospital could become what we call a surge hospital in case of a military incident and a pandemic, and also serve citizens of the United States. So it's another one of the aggressive visionary ideas that we have to continue to position Nebraska as a leader in our own national security, as we are in terms of agricultural security and an essential component of America's economic well-being, and now are leading in healthcare security areas. So we've got a lot of exciting things happening.
Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, a Republican representing the 1st Congressional District of Nebraska. Find him on Twitter at Jeff Fortenberry. Congressman, thank you. Great to talk to you.
You too, Julie. Thank you so much.